So welcome on the show, Alan.
Thank you for having me.
I'm really excited about this session. I was telling people we started these sessions about 2 weeks ago. This is our third session, and it's not because we are a media house or anything. It's just that we just don't know what to do. We are sitting at home, no events, and we'd rather talk to people about things we are passionate about. And that's why we thought of talking to you, because you're passionate about Land Rovers and off-roading, and you sort of straddle both. So guys, Alan's on the show. Alan's from Mumbai, and from what I know about Alan, and I'll let you correct me if I go wrong, Alan, is that he's a mechanical engineer by education. He was a shippy. He was a drag racer, still is into speed and racing, off-roader, of course, biker, and of course runs one of India's best restoration shops, restoring not only Land Rovers. And this session is about Land Rovers, but Alan has seen them and done almost all the finest vehicles that are there in this country. So Alan, I'll let you complete that little introduction that I gave.
Okay. So yeah, basically, education-wise, I did my mechanical in Bombay, VJTI itself. And post that, because dad's in the shipping line, and I was also keen with bigger engines at that moment, I studied marine engineering for another 2 years. And before I went on the ship, I did about 6 months in automobile. But I still went on the ship. I did about 2 contracts. And that's when I realized that the whole isolation life wasn't to me. I kind of like being exposed to people. I like being out. So that's when I came back. I took the sabbatical from there. And I started doing a lot of drag cars that time, because I've been like doing drag racing since probably the 11th, 12th, building small cars. Nothing big at those time. It was Esteems and Zens, and the thrill for speed was always there. And post that was when I was introduced to the gypsy. So, so we had a gypsy in the family, and I was the designated driver. So the weekend, it became taking that car off the road. So we used to go to Lonavala, to Mahabaleshwar, sometimes with family, sometimes with friends. That's when the off-roading part kicked in. And we, as a group, were probably Bombay's earliest off-roaders. And that time it was only gypsies. The jeeps weren't used that much. Then with this whole off-roading is how I met Mr. Goenka. He's also related to me, but he loves off-roading as well. So that's where the bond happened, and then I started working on his Land Rovers. Because he had a lot of Land Rovers at that point, and for me, Land Rover was something new. It was something that you've read about, you haven't seen, you dreamt about in those days. From there, we went to Land Rovers. Then we did his cars. We did a lot of outside cars. We did a lot of project cars, some coming from outside India as well, from like the shores of Sri Lanka. And post there is where it took a turn somewhere maybe about 8 years ago to classics and vintage cars. And I think it's not, I mean, I haven't looked back ever since. We're doing few Land Rovers now, probably do about 2 cars a year, but it's mainly the vintage and classic cars that's taking up most of my time.
Yeah, that's quite awesome. So how many, last 8 years, how many vehicles would you have worked on?
We probably aim at about 10 to 12 a year, which is still a tough number when it comes to these cars, because they do take a lot of your time. A simple car would go about a year. So we plan for 10 to 12. Sometimes we do exceed it. Sometimes we are a little under that, but that's what we plan. And most of the time we manage to get about 12 cars, different varieties. So it doesn't all have to be very exotic cars, because those can take up to 5 years sometimes, just because of parts. So you have some nice, so if it's a Land Rover, probably I look at about 6 to 8 months in completing one of them. But that said, I look at 12 cars a year.
So that means you've done somewhere between 75 to 100 cars in 8 years?
Correct, yeah.
Wow. That's probably the most experience anyone would have. And awards, right? Recently at Jaipur and other places, you won a lot of awards.
Yes. So we keep, there are a lot of competitions that come across. So there is, the most renowned was Cartier. Then there was a 21 gun salute, which is in Delhi. And then every state has some of these vintage cars. And if I go to Delhi on my way back, I normally stop at Jaipur, show off the cars there. Then we have we've specialized in chrome plating now. So
Okay.
that's what I try to market around the place. So we have won. So this past year we won at Cartier, we won at 21 Gun Salute, quite a few at 21 Gun Salute, Jaipur again. So, but the competition is really good right now. It's really good. So, we are all up in the game.
Yeah, I know you have to find a unique car which has not been shown before, work on it, get it ready in time. Can imagine. So I'm going to delve straight into Land Rovers, Allan, because I think that's what this program was planned to be. And we'll go straight first into Mr. Goenka's collection, because that's how you said you got into Land Rovers as well. So tell us a little bit about that collection. We've all heard about this collection, India's largest collection, his passion. But if you could just walk us through, how many does he have? What are these vehicles like? And any interesting stories about how he came across those vehicles?
Uncle, Mr. Goenka's first car was brought through an STC auction. It was a Range Rover, a classic Range Rover. He still has that car. So that was where his love for the Range Rover started, the Land Rover rather. And ever since that, he's bought quite a few of them.
Okay.
So if I have to run you through his collection, well, the first time I met him, most of these cars, there was one that was, or two that were restored. The rest were literally looked like scrap around the place, but a lot of them, because that's how STC auction did sell their cars. They were very bastardized cars, mix match, chassis over chassis. And then I did a lot of research on the cars. And then, obviously we've built the collection, and people knew about his collection. Then I think about 3 years ago, an article came in Autocar, and where they had a photo of the entire collection, which then was about 27, 28 cars. And this is about 4 years ago. But obviously, we've grown from there. We've increased numbers from there as well. So we are looking just around probably above 30. And the good part about the collection is it's practically every Land Rover that was there. In terms of, if there's a series 1, which was the early ones from the 48 to the 58, there's a very early series 1, then there's a 50 series 1, then the grill changed to something that you have. This is a 50 series 1. So then there was post 51 to 58, which was the T grill. So he has those as well. Then the series 2, series 2A. So good part is, you have the entire range of Land Rovers. And then coming to the Range Rovers, the Defenders, the short wheelbase Defenders, the 90s, to a modern little fast modified car as well. And there are some off-road Land Rovers that we've made. And they're all pretty much spec'd up.
Right. I remember you sent 2 of these to us in Goa for the India.
Absolutely.
Is that beautiful red 90 and the series 1.
The series 1, yes.
Yeah. That's amazing.
This series 1 has an interesting story. This is the Maharaja of Kutch's car.
Okay.
And I went to one of the palaces because he was selling a Studebaker. So I went there and I negotiated with, it was one of the palaces, but the palace was handed over to one of his advisors. So the cars was there. So, the guy showed me the Studebaker. We decided a price. We got the car out. And then he said, Allan Saab, there's another car if you want. It's just occupying a parking. So I went there and there was this series 1. So I did not show too much of excitement. And I asked him, what's the story about it? He said, this car was used for hunting and he had about 5, 6 of them. And when we did something good, he, as an advisor to the Maharaja, he used to give us one of these cars. So he said, Allan, I got 2 of them. So I said, where's the other one? And then he takes me under a palace and it's over there. And so there were 2 cars, and then I kind of negotiated because for him, he's never used these cars. They were just taking parking and he needed to liquidate. And we got both out. And one of them is a very, very rare car because it's a 1950. So that's the blue car that you had shown in between, which was a full grill. So this is probably the most difficult to get, because the one earlier to this is impossible. So this is the most difficult one to get, and
I
so
can see that.
this and getting this car out from the palace took us about a month. We broke one pillar because they just, I mean, part of the palaces were built around these cars. A lot of cars that were parked inside.
Oh God.
Hmm. So this was the Maharaja of Kutch. So we have two of their series ones.
Wow. Wow. Is that the souped up car you talked about?
Yeah, so this is the Defender. This is a 90, and it was a short wheelbase. And since Mr. Goenka liked off-roading with these cars because he couldn't do the gypsies, he couldn't do the jeeps. They were, I mean, on his back, they were a little tough. He needed air conditioning. So we built this car for him. And it has a lift gate, it has the roll cages, it has a little high-powered engine as well.
Okay.
So this is the 90 that was built for off-roading. Beautiful car, beautiful car.
Okay. So, since you talked about a different, more powerful motors, etc., so this collection of 30 vehicles, are they mostly running original specs and motors, or have there been a lot of transplants and different engines and stuff?
The little historic cars like the Series 3 are mostly running original engines. So
Okay.
so they came with the earlier Series 1 had the 1.6 engine. So most of all of the Series 1 have that, except a little later one which came with the 2-liter. So they are all standard.
Okay.
So the Series 2, the Series 3, where the diesels also were introduced, the 2.25s, they're all original. Probably the only, no, actually, there's pretty much everything original on them. But then when you came to the Defenders and the Discoveries, the
Yeah.
diesel engines just were boring. They were underpowered. They stressed you out. They climbed nothing. So because they had the 2.25 and the 2.5. So these cars have been transplanted. So these have bigger engines. They have some of them have diesel engines. So a long time ago, so there's Mr. Sirish Deodar in Nagpur,
Yes.
and yeah, so we came across him because he has a 110, and he comes down to Bombay to pick up a vintage bike, and he shows Mr. Goenka the engine in his car, which was a DCM Toyota. So it
Right.
was the 14B, the 3.6.
Yeah. Yeah.
So ever since, I practically have put that engine into everything. You know, I put them into Defenders, into Discoveries, into Jeeps, into Gypsies. We've turbocharged them. The one that you've seen previously, the off-roading spec one, has a DCM Toyota with a turbocharge. Then we placed an intercooler. So yeah, to this one. So we've tweaked this, kept on tweaking it to the turbo lags minimum. Cooling efficiency is good. Then some of them have V8s as well.
Yes.
So they've been replaced with V8s. I mean, some did come originally with V8. So the Defender had the 3.5-liter V8. But we've put some bigger ones from the Range Rover. So the 3.9, 4.2 have gone into a few Defenders. Then we've done some other big V8 diesel conversions as well.
Nice, nice. No, I met Sirish and I went to see the garage, and I saw some of Mr. Goenka's vehicles. In fact, he put a V8. He put a V8 in a Mahindra, which
Yeah,
he,
in a Jeep, in
I
a
think he
550,
back,
yes.
put it back, and if I know correctly, last time he was restoring his 110 back, and he was going to put the original engine back. So he was taking
He's
the
put
diesel
the original V8 back in now, yeah.
V8. Right, right. No,
Because his car is originally a V8 as well. So he had, I mean, problem is at one point it was fuel efficiency was the problem. We wanted the cars more drivable, take them out everywhere.
yeah.
So he had done the conversion for the 14B finally. And he is eventually now gone back to the V8 because nothing compares to the V8.
Yeah.
The sound, the way it moves, if I have to compare it with a diesel.
We've heard that in his garage.
Yeah.
So
And
these cars, again, I'm just going to come back once again to Mr. Goenka's cars. 30 cars. I mean, I know I had two, and it was a handful to keep them going, starting them, maintaining them, keep the battery going. How do you manage? I mean, the maintenance alone of these 30 cars, regular upkeep, keeping them running. What is that like?
Land Rovers aren't honestly the most reliable cars. And you own two, you'd probably know that. So they need a lot of, my words, a lot of love. So
Yeah.
I try to give them that little love once a week to each car, once a week. So if it means a little spin around the place, a little greasing, then it comes to a checkup for the electricals, for the mechanicals. But that's a once a week routine for these cars. So probably in a week, maybe 3, 4 of his cars would get checked, and the next week. So once a week is when they come, they go for a spin. Probably I take them, probably someone else will take them. Sometimes on a weekend, I'll take them home. So they all have to be run. Otherwise, they will just go. So you have basic problems with these cars. You have your bushings if your cars are standing still. So the rubber bushings are really bad quality that you get now. So then you go to polyurethane. Then your hoses have been a inherent problem with these cars. All your cooling hoses, your gaskets tend to fail. So the things you kind of learn with experience, and then probably develop something better than what was original on the cars, just so that it's reliable.
So, if there's a job out there for someone who can come and help you drive them every week just to keep them running, just please just drop me a WhatsApp, huh?
Absolutely.
I'm sure a lot of people on this show would love to come and join you doing that. So that's incredible, Allan. I think you're one of the few people, I don't know if only in India or probably around the world, who've seen all the variety of Land Rover that you've seen, right from all the different types of series one. There was 3 in those pictures itself. And then you talked about 2 and 3 and, the 90, 110. There's a Camel Trophy Defender as well, right? In its collection. I couldn't find a picture anyway, but was that
it's just there behind, it's there, the yellow color one. It's in one of the pictures that you put.
Okay, was it sort of always a camel car, or was it?
No, so this was the one right behind me was a stock Defender with a 2.25. So at one point we went with the 3.5 liter engine. Then we put in the 3.9 finally, and then we changed the head also to a 4.2, and then it's fine. So this is mechanically. Then it's now finally gone from carb to fuel injection, because these carbs also they need again a lot of taking care, maintenance of the carbs. And then so this is completely specced up in terms for off-roading, for some like overlanding. So there are double roll cages inside. There's a snorkel. There's air pumps. There are 2 air pumps up and down. There are 2 stepneys. It has a double stepney carrier that was fabricated. All the door skins on this particular car have been made because the car was really, really bad. And it's got camping stuff on the top. It's got a beer dispenser. So it's got everything that you'd probably want for an overlanding trip. And this was one of my first cars that I fell in love with.
I can understand. You should drive this and come for RFC, Allan. You should come and drive around. We'll make you open all the stages with this, and then the competitors can start. Huh?
Super, done. Done. That's a plan.
And not only the Defenders or the Camel Trophy Defender, the most incredible vehicle I've seen is the 6x6.
He is the 6x6, yes.
It was in Sirish's garage, and I think it's again Mr. Goenka's collection. I don't know if there are more 6x6 Defenders in India, but guys, there's one for you. A game viewer vehicle, typically for the safari views. There's you can't see it in this picture, but there's a little seat in the front on the bonnet for the spotter to sit on.
So this was also a lucky find for us. And then we decided, because we went into the forest a lot, Mr. Goenka loved the forest. So we made it into a complete safari car with, again, this has a generator. You can run probably 2 houses with it. It's everything on board. So this was one of them. This is, probably, it is the only car in India.
And it was always a 6x6. It's not as if,
no, this was
cut their Jeeps and stuff. This is okay. So no,
originally a 6x6. Yeah.
So yes, guys, I think Allan's the only one who's seen everything to do with Land Rovers. So, welcome to the Cougar Motorsport special stage again. For those who've joined us a little late, this is our third special stage. We're talking to people about things we are passionate about. This week we've got Allan from Mumbai, who's deeply involved with the collection and restoration of vintage and classic vehicles and Land Rovers. So I'll just move a little bit, Allan, to other Land Rovers. So apart from Mr. Goenka's vehicles, which has been your most memorable Land Rover restoration?
So I have two cars that I will talk about. One was a very, very close friend, and he had a Defender 90.
Huh?
And practically all that was there of the car was the chassis. People tend to think that these cars are made out of aluminum so they don't rust. But the truth being is they corrode. I mean, aluminum corrodes. So they corrode, and the underbody is really bad. So practically the car was built from ground up. The chassis was, I have no idea why, was quite decent. So we kept the original chassis. Even in terms of the suspension was all gone. So we put on new suspension, and he had then given me, I mean, he had no budget. He just wanted this car up and running. It was an old family car. So it took us about 2 years, and it was a 90, so it's a rare car. So it's all blue with a black roll cage, and then finally I put in the DCM Toyota engine, and then he never liked the sound of the diesel. So then we put in a 4.2 V8, and he's loving the car. The car's fast. It's got new differentials. It literally drives like a brand new car. So that was the one car where I did the 90. And before that is India's oldest Land Rover.
Yes.
So I'll tell you the story. Yeah, so this is a 1948. So it's a late 1948 November Series 1. So the Series 1, which was the first Land Rover, came in 1957, end of 57, 58. So this was a very, sorry, 47, 48. So this was probably the first year of production.
Yeah.
There are very fine details in this car that are there on no other Series 1. To begin with, in this picture, you can see the green chassis.
Yes.
So post Series 1s.
I was going to ask you about that, because when I restored a Series 1, which is a 55, everywhere I Googled and I checked records, we found a black
Chassis.
I'll ask you about this one, yeah.
Yeah, so it was, this shade was called sage green. It was only for the 48, 49, and that took till about May 49. And so the chassis, a lot of the suspension stuff also is green. Then the next year it changed for 6 months to galvanize, and then it went to black, and then it remained black for the longest time. So the engine color, so the details that we've gone to in this car are mind-boggling. Like every nut, every bolt, every part that has to be galvanized, and how much of hot dip the galvanizing needs. The engine being rebuilt, the original coil, the original wiring. So fun thing about these cars, this is a very early one. There are only about 3 in India. This is the earliest. The headlights are inside the grille.
Yes.
So they also rotated. So it's like the early Fords where you can put light into your engine compartment. And these grills were also actually used to grill food on when you went hunting, when you went on safaris.
It came off.
It came off, and you could use it to grill food. So it was one of them. Till the Series 2 is when they used them. So even how the silencer is routed is very different on this car. One more fun fact about this car is it's a semi-glossy paint shade. So this car can't be polished, because if you polish it, it will obviously go full glossy. And while spraying paint, it has to be perfect, because you can't have rundown that you can rub and polish. So your painting is on high pressure without any orange peel. It's just your one chance that you get. And the same thing on the chassis as well. So that's the detailing in this. Then the hood, the stitching of the hood is a one-off. It came only for 6 months, and we replicated that exact thing because that's not available anywhere. So we did that on that car. So even this car has a funny history. When we picked up this car from the Maharaja, this is also directly a single owner from the Maharaja. It had flat fenders. So I see the RC book and I see 48, 49, and then I kind of, I mean, the fenders just don't match and they looked well done. So, you know, the rounding on the fenders were flat. So we thought, you know, whether it's a Maharaja car, whether he ordered it this way. Finally, we realized that he was a hunting enthusiast. So he used to hunt with his car and he used to not shoot prey. He used to bang into prey. So it was one of his things that he should just bang into prey. So a lot of cattle that were harmed and, you know, his fenders were kind of damaged. So that's when the flat fenders came in. So one of the Maharaja's friends gave me this. And then we went back, we made completely new fenders in aluminum. And so this car is probably spec'd up as one of the world's finest early series one is what I would say.
I can see that. And is this with the royal family now, or is it part of your collection?
No, this is Mr. Goenka's car.
Okay.
So he had picked it up from there, yeah.
You know, you must, I mean, it's already a museum. I think it should just be converted into a proper museum where we can all get passes or get tickets and come and see these cars. They're just such a delight. They're just saying hi, so I'm just going to say hi to him right now.
Yeah.
You know, this picture and your story about this car reminds me. Have you heard of the Land Rover Reborn program?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So they picked up 15 to 20, 25 Series 1, early Series 1, 80 and the 86-inch, and they're restoring them completely to factory spec, and you can buy them with a warranty, with a 12-month.
With a 12-month warranty is what they're selling.
And I think most of them are already pre-sold to collectors around the world.
I think all of them have sold. They finally sold all. Yeah, all of them.
But what a brilliant move to get the heritage back. That's all. So any Land Rover that you're working on currently?
Currently, so I told you I do just probably 2 cars a year. So the one's a very rare car belonging to a royal family in Mysore. It's a 109 single cab.
Okay.
So they've had it in the family. They've had a they've had the engine's probably the 2.25. So they've replaced the engine. So we've put in a Scorpio engine now. The complete mechanicals, the drivetrains is from a Scorpio. So it drives as good as the Scorpio. We've kind of now building the entire body. So I'm in the process of doing the entire body. The entire body is being refabricated because aluminum, as it oxidizes, it just becomes old. You know, it kind of tends to suddenly a bubble would show up in the paint. So we try to fabricate everything new. And it's going to be spec'd up. It's going to be with a roll cage, a lift kit, big tires.
Nice.
And apart from that, we're doing a very, with edition, we're doing a very rare lightweight.
Oh.
So that was something that was missing. And not many people know that we've got that. So we're doing a very, very, very lightweight. And it will come to me finally and we'll kindly get it up and running.
Yeah, we saw 2 lightweights at Manibhanjang 2 years ago when we went there for the Land Rover 70 years. So that's the first time we saw a lightweight, and we were, you know, quickly on Google trying to figure out the whole history of
what is it.
And it's unbelievable. How did they ever land up in India? You know, vehicles built for specific purpose with the Air Force. So one other thing about these cars, and I'm just talking from personal experience, ownership challenges, you know, papers, insurance, National Green Tribunal. I mean, how do you manage that?
Luckily in Bombay, we're not as bad as Delhi with the NGT. So Bombay, we have the VCCI, the WIA, that kind of supports us vintage car owners, restorers. So, you know, if we don't need to go directly to the RTO, we can go via them. They'll have everything checked first. Green taxes done. So owning these cars, as long as they are running and decently running, is not a problem in Bombay. And you can drive them pretty often. You have to be willing to, pay for, what you want. So you have to pay for your renewal of your green taxes, your insurance regularly. But everything's available in Bombay. VCCI, WI, they just help you. They want these cars on the road.
Wow. I think I'll have to move to Bombay one day.
How is it being owning the Series 1 for you?
See, we can only drive it in an exhibition or a vintage car rally. Otherwise, you're not allowed to drive it. That was the NGT ruling.
Mm. That's your
That's the
car, yeah?
obviously nowhere close to the kind of restoration you do. We had a very small budget, and we worked with the local guys in Manibanjang and in Siliguri to bring it
Mm.
to this shape. But yeah, so it can't be driven. And thankfully, there is this little exemption in NGT that you can keep classic and vintage vehicles and drive them in an exhibition.
And an
Because
exhibition.
for the Land Rovers which fall out of the classic and vintage category,
Mm.
but are more than 15-year-old or 10-year-old diesels,
Mm.
they're not supposed to exist. You're supposed to scrap them.
Scrap them off, yeah?
You can't drive them in an exhibition. You can't have them. So I
Mm.
had a 110, which was perhaps one of the best 110s in India. It was a 2004 TD5 with only
TD5, yeah?
6,000 kilometers on it. But it was 15 years old. I can't drive it in Delhi. The minute I would drive out, I'd be stopped at every traffic intersection by the cops. They'd want to see the pollution first. When they see the pollution, they see the age of the vehicle, and then you had it.
Then
So
you had it, yeah?
I had to let it go because I'm not moving out of Delhi right now. But yeah, I think I should have thought about moving to Bombay and keeping that car.
At least move the cars here, yeah?
Yeah.
But it's a beautiful car. I mean, you had one of the rarest, I mean,
Yes.
the cleanest cars.
But I'm glad it's gone to somebody who's equally or in fact even more crazy about Land Rovers. And he got it on his 50th birthday, and his friends got together and paid for it, bought it from me, and gifted it to him because he's such a big.
Wow.
So he's become a good friend now. And every time I travel down to Kerala, you won't believe he's got his driver standing with their car at the airport, and he insists that I only drive that. So
Driving that car.
I have it, but I don't have it. So it's about that. But I must tell you a little bit about this series one. I learned. I mean, I know nothing about Land Rovers compared to the knowledge you have, Alan. But through this car and owning this car and the process of restoring it,
Right.
I read and I tried to speak to so many people and Sirish and so many things I came to know. So we tracked the car back and from the chassis number of the car.
Mm.
And this is a page from the original dispatch register of this car.
Wow.
From Hull and 57661853, the second one from the top. So
Yeah.
it was dispatched on 17th June 1955.
55.
Came Devar's Garage and engineering work in Calcutta.
Mm.
And the chassis number 57661853. So 5 is the 1955, 7 is the code for Land Rover, 6 was the 86-inch, and the other 6 was that it was a CKD right and drive for export. So they did CKD cars in 1955. They shipped CKD cars, and dealerships in different countries like Devas used to assemble these cars.
Assemble them.
Sell them with a warranty. And Devars today is a dealership in Calcutta. It's a Maruti dealership. And we spoke to the current owner, and his father had bought the dealership from an Englishman, Scott, I think, and he shared with us a copy of the dealership agreement between the Rover Car Company and Devar's Garage.
And Devar.
To import, assemble, and sell these cars with the warranty. So just through the ownership of this one car, and by the way, she's called Jolie, we learned so much about the whole ecosystem in Manibanjan, the whole process of restoration, and the whole history. It was just amazing. So my pretty much the last part of my question to you: driving these cars, right, Alan? No creature comforts. We heard about some of the things you've done to some of the newer cars in terms of air conditioning and stuff, but no creature comforts. Very basic, manual, double clutch, a lot of crunches and stuff. What's your experience like? What would you say about that?
I have mixed opinions on different models. So I personally love how the Series 1 looks. I love everything about it. I love researching about them because, as you've seen, I mean, yourself, the amount of knowledge you get just researching a single car. I do 70 cars. So I mean, so I mean, I'm saying this, each series, one of a different year, gives you something new. Uh, but I don't like driving series ones. I find them I find them very, very utilitarian. They are very rugged. They have a very upright seating position. Gear shifting is not smooth. The engines are not too peppy. Uh, they sound beautiful, but driving them is not comfortable at all for me. Then, I mean, as you go above the Series 2, they got a little better. The Series 3 got a little better. The Defender is when they got, I mean, for me, beautiful. The 110, practically among the whole, I mean, what is their spectrum would be my favorite car.
Mm-hmm.
The 110 has, I mean, in the 110 they introduced coil spring suspension and all-time four-wheel drive. So you could go over bad roads and not feel a thing and turn at high speeds. So the 110 is probably my favorite, followed by the classic Range Rover. Then would be the Discovery, and the series is always later. But I mean, I could drive a 110 practically every day of my life.
Completely second that. I've been asked by one of your friends to let you speak more, Alan. So if there's anything more that you would like to share, I do want to hear from you about your perspective on the new Defender as well before we move on to any questions. But anything else about these vehicles that you'd like to tell people on this program? Because everybody wants to own one. What would you like to tell them?
You should know what you're getting into. A lot of people, I mean, now we are 2020. In probably like the early 2000s, these cars weren't expensive. You would probably get them under a lakh. And a lot of people pick them up thinking, boss, Land Rover hai. I mean, I have a Land Rover. And those people, the cars are still lying as it is with them. And I know a lot of people that way. And eventually, just to clear parking, because parking is a premium in India, they're selling off their cars now. It's not an easy car to own by any extent. Parts are expensive. Parts are obsolete. So we have about 2 or 3 suppliers that I know who would get parts for us. There's Gupta Ji in Bombay. Then Siliguri is a place that we always go in for parts. Yeah, but then it's again mostly used parts.
Yeah.
It's used parts. So then I have a agreement with 2, 3 companies, with Craddock, with Britpart, that they do sell us parts for little later cars. So, restoring these cars is difficult. There's a lot of money involved. You easily go upwards of 10 lakhs. So this is one of my favorite cars that I was telling you about, the blue one that I restored for someone. So it's difficult restoring them. It's not expensive anymore. I mean, it is very expensive anymore. It easily goes beyond 10, 15 if you want a proper ground up restoration. Then mechanicals. But what I would say is, if you can afford one, you should definitely have one. It is iconic to have a 90. It's iconic to have a 110. The Range Rover is a beautiful car. There are certain cars that you avoid. So the P38 is something that I advise people to stay, away from. It's got air suspension, which was prone to failure. Then I tell people to try and go in for a 200 TDI rather than a 300 TDI, which some people don't agree with me, but I know how reliable the 200 TDI is. Or you go in for a TD5, but everyone's not as lucky as you. So you stick to a 200 TDI instead of a 300 TDI. And depend on your lifestyle. Someone who's used to a modern car probably would require a Range Rover Classic or a Discovery. But someone who likes Jeeps, who likes off-roading, and these cars are beautiful, beautiful off-roaders. Because they are expensive, you don't see people in India modding them. Like, for instance, RFC. It would be a super, super competitive car. But, one is availability of a 90 is very difficult. Secondly, once you get a 90 for, say, 10 lakhs, then to put in all that money with all the high lift suspension and your axles and all is a lot of money. So you rather buy a Jeep for 1 lakh and modify it. But otherwise, abroad, this car is widely used for, serious off-roading like your event. And I do take it out for a lot of our events, the 90 and the 110 as well.
Couldn't agree again. perfect advice. That's what I say to whoever asks us as well. Everybody wants one, but then, you know, they don't want to pay for it completely. So if there was a all India Land Rover Heritage Owners Meet, and, you know, we're all connected on that WhatsApp group and stuff, would you come? Would you participate?
Absolutely. We were willing. We said we all host you in Goa, and that's where it should be. And like how we had it last time, the 4x4 India week, we should have it probably a week or so before RFC. It's monsoons. It will be nice driving down in Goa. And absolutely, it's something that I would like to, you know, till date, I meet a few people who own Land Rovers, and I still get a lot of knowledge. Something that I never knew about certain car, about a certain part of a car. There's a gentleman who gets a Range Rover two-door. He bought them for the first 2 years of your event, RFC, from Kerala, I think, yellow color. He even came for 4x4 India week. It was a two-door that drove in all the way from Kerala or Chennai for your event. And it was an elderly gentleman. But he spoke so passionately about the car. And it was his only Land Rover. And he knew every single thing in and out because he restored the car. So when you there's something buying a restored car is against restoring a car. So when you restore a car, you know everything about it. You know the whole process, what's where and how what runs. And if you compare that to, you know, I bought someone's restored car, it's a different experience. So I'm all game for the Land Rovers meet.
We should do that. This is a picture from Folkestone when Oxford came back to UK after the overland trip. And all the Land Rover owners had collected to greet it, receive the car. So they're all lined up, and we should plan something
like this. We should probably even drive to the mountains. I've taken 2 cars to Spiti. Then I know Sirish has done long drives in some little older days up the hill. So that's something that we can do. We should plan.
Yeah. So two questions, Alan. What are the two, and this is nothing to do with your restorations, but since you're such a nut, what are the two most popular beliefs about Land Rovers? And I'm using the word
beliefs. Number one would be that Land Rovers do not rust. I have had so many people coming up to me and telling me, boss, my car is not rusted. And then they go and say, Land Rovers are made out of aluminum, they do not rust. A lot of parts of the car are actually steel. The frames are steel, the chassis is steel, a lot of the supports are steel. So what happens is you have bimetallic corrosion. So there's a lot of corrosion on the underbody, the rear parts. So it's a common belief of, you know, I'm saying 80% of the people that Land Rovers do not rust. A lot of people don't know that Land Rover actually used aluminum because after the war, they never had steel. They never had that much of steel. So that's the reason they went to aluminum, not out of choice.
Surplus stocks from aeroplane fabrication.
Absolutely. So that's how they went into aluminum. And so a lot of steel, even in the Series 1. So these cars do rust. And number two, a lot of people think Land Rovers are fast. I have no idea why. People do have the thing, it's a big car, but it's a fast car. They buy it because they think it's a fast car. So they kind of equate it to the new Range Rovers that are coming out. They think it's V8. Some of them buy Range Rovers V8s, which are the 3.5, thinking they're fast cars. They're not fast cars by any means. They are not sluggish. I mean, if you go for the smaller diesel engines, yes, they are very sluggish. They are nice. They're nice to drive. They are pleasant to drive. They are drivable, but I wouldn't term them as fast. And I mean, people who think that Land Rovers, again, the last thing, I'm thinking a third one, a lot of people think that it's a Jeep. So they put Land Rover restoration prices in terms of Jeep prices. So a 4x4, 2 lakh mein ho jayega na. So, I mean, you get calls like these also, people who have inherited these cars. Alan sir, gari bej raha ho, 2.5 lakh ka budget hai. I'm like, boss, theek hai. So, you know, so that's one thing. But I mean, restoring these cars are as much as probably a classic car of that era.
Yeah, I think the cars from the Project Reborn sold for somewhere around $100,000 US each.
Absolutely, yeah.
They know what the value is. The two beliefs that I want to share with you, Alvin, maybe
Yep.
you give us some very practical information on common beliefs around these vehicles. But one of them is that 60%, they say 60% of Land Rovers ever built are still running. So Land Rovers never die. They just get restored and they come back, thanks to people like you. So that's the number one belief. And the second belief is that the first car that 1/3 of the world's population ever saw,
So is a Land Rover, yeah.
because of all the expedition, and the adventurers and the missionaries who went to different parts of the world. So the first car they ever saw the Land Rover. These are totally unrelated, but beliefs which I thought I'd share with you. So thank you so much, Alan. I really learned a lot. I hope this has been of use to some of the people on the program as well. At least we all now know who to call with a little bigger budget, of course, and ask for help. I'm sure Alan's advice we can always get for a beer. But if you want to send your car to Alan and you want to get it done as well as that Series 1 that you saw, then be prepared for that. Thank you so much, Alan.
Thank you. And we are all obviously looking forward to the new Defender. Let's see how that comes.
Yeah, it's coming this year for sure. Yeah. Great, Alan. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Joining. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.